When the Legends Die, Chapter 27. The next spring, they worked the early rodeos in eastern New Mexico and the Oklahoma Panhandle. And that fall, they worked little Colorado towns. It was the same story over and over. Tom won or lost pretty much as Red told him to. Tom had learned most of the tricks, but now and then a horse outguessed him, and occasionally he was thrown when Red had ordered him to win. Red was furious each time, accused him of the double cross, but in his sober, good-natured intervals he said things evened out pretty well. We're still eating, and I always say a man's doing all right as long as he don't go hungry or thirsty too long at a stretch. Tom's life settled into a pattern of long rides between rodeos, when he just drifted and didn't even think, of days and nights in shabby hotels, third-rate cafes, and noisy little towns where he slept, ate, and waited, of hot, sweaty, horse-smelling, crowd-noisy arenas, of hard-riding go-rounds when he really lived. Those were the times for which he endured everything else, especially the winning rides that Red eventually ordered at every rodeo. The other riders paid him little attention. Time after time, some gay-shirted, arrogant rider mistook him for a stable boy or a gangling kid who had sneaked into the arena and either ordered him out or tried to send him on some errand. That was inevitable. Tom had grown a couple of inches, put on 20 pounds of muscle and sinew, and was almost as big as Red, but he still played the part of the backcountry Indian kid with ragged hair and shabby work clothes. The other contestants, even the local amateurs, wore gaudy shirts, bright neckerchiefs, and fancy stitch boots. Tom looked like a rusty, bedraggled crow in a pen of peacocks. Another winter, and when spring came, Red said he guessed they'd better try North Texas this time around. It was a long ride there, and rodeos were far apart. Betters cautious. Red became sullen and surly. "No profit in this," he said. "We've got to find some way to cover more ground." But Tom was riding well when he rode, and by early June Red decided to make a killing in one of the better shows up near the Oklahoma line. He picked up a fair-sized stake of winnings along the way, and they moved in on the show Red had marked. Red sized things up and decided on a final go-round win with big stakes. Tom made his routine rides in the first two go-rounds and was all set for the finals when he could only win Red's bets but would have the satisfaction of really top-form ride. When he went to the chutes before the finals, Tom wondered why Red was so pleased with the world. Finally, Red said, "I've got a surprise for you." Tom asked what it was, but all Red would say was, "You just go out there and do your stuff, and we'll go home in style." Tom had drawn a big roan that had thrown the best of the local riders in 6 seconds in the first go-round. It looked like the worst horse Tom had drawn all spring. Red said it was a tight bucker to the right and fast. Keep a short rein, power the bastard all you can, and you can ride him till hell and gone. Tom settled himself in the saddle, dried his hands, measured a short rein, and threaded it between his fingers. He set his spurs. The judges signaled ready, and Tom gave the signal to the gateman. The bucking strap was jerked tight around the bronc's flanks, the gate swung open, and the roan lunged out, bucking viciously. Tom powered the rein, hauled the horse's head around, and it went hog wild. It bucked twice, then ran straight across the arena and slammed into the fence as though he were stone blind. Tom didn't have time to kick free of the stirrups. His right leg was caught against a fence stringer, and the stab of pain was like a lightning bolt through him. But he kicked free as the bronc went down, and he sprawled on hands and knees. He got up, took 3 steps, and fell, just out of reach of the bronc's thrashing hooves. The horse had broken its neck. The crowd groaned. The pickup men galloped up, swung out of the saddle, and helped Tom to his feet. He tried to step on the right leg and then would have fallen again if the men hadn't held him up. Red came running from the chutes, cursing like a devil, and helped Tom hop back to the chutes and sit down, dizzy with pain. A doctor came, a tall, leathery man, and after a quick probe with his fingers, he said, "I think your leg's broken, son." He looked up at Red, standing by and still damning everything in sight. "Are you the boy's father?" "Hell no," Red said. "He's an Indian." "I didn't ask the color of his skin," the doctor snapped. "Are you responsible for him?" "I run things, if that's what you mean." By then they had brought the stretcher. "Get him over to my office," the doctor said, "where I can make a proper examination." The office was only a block down the street. The doctor gave Tom a shot to ease the pain, made a thorough examination, said, "The tibia is broken. That's the big bone in your lower leg. You're through riding for a couple of months, son." Red, who was scowling and muttering to himself, exclaimed, "What the hell of a thing to do to me?" The doctor swung around, furious. "Whose leg is this, his or yours? Get out of here, you damn fool, and get a pair of crutches for this boy. There's a drugstore down at the corner. Now get." Red snorted. "I had close to $1,500 on that ride." But when the doctor turned on him again, Red left. The doctor fitted splints and bandages, and when he had finished, he said to Tom, "I want you to stay out of the saddle till next fall, understand?" "How am I going to get home?" "Where do you live?" "In New Mexico, over near Aztec. I've got a ride home." Just then, Red came back with the crutches. The doctor adjusted them, then asked Red, "How's this boy going to get home? He can't ride a horse." "He'll get home all right," Red said. "How?" "I said he'll get home all right. Come on, Tom." "Just a minute," the doctor said. "There's a little matter of you forgetting. My bill." "That," Red said angrily, "is on the rodeo." "No, that's on you." Red tried to argue, got nowhere. Finally, he paid the doctor's bill, and they left. Out on the street, Red demanded, "Why in the hell, if you had to do something like this, couldn't you do it yesterday before I put my money on you?" Tom didn't answer. He was dizzy, and he was having trouble with the crutches. He hoped Red had left the horses in front of the arena. He didn't know how he could get into the saddle, but he figured he could ride once he got on. They went up the street to the arena's main gate, Red still snorting and snarling. Tom looked for their horses. They weren't anywhere in sight. Then Red cut across the street toward a battered green pickup truck with a two-horse trailer. He turned and shouted at Tom, waiting uncertainly at the curb, "Come on over here." Tom hobbled across to where Red stood beside the truck, a half grin on his face. "Where are the horses?" Tom asked. "In the trailer." Red gave a short, bitter laugh. "I said we'd go home in style, but I didn't figure I'd go home broke." He was both proud and angry. Pride won for a moment. "I bought this outfit this morning off that calf roper that broke his leg yesterday. He was hard up for doctor's money. Get him," and he turned away. "Where are you going now?" Tom asked. "To get your chaps and see if I can find that stakeholder and get my money back." Red crossed the street and went into the arena, truculent as a dog looking for a fight. Tom crutched around the trailer. The horses were restless, nervous on the trailer's quivering floorboards. He saw the two saddles and the bedrolls in the back of the truck. He knew little about cars, but this outfit looked as though it had been over a lot of roads. And at last he opened the door, pulled himself up, and settled himself in the well-worn seat and waited. Red was gone 15 minutes. He came back with a stormy look, tossed Tom's chaps in the back with the saddles, got behind the wheel and started the motor. He ground the gears, jerked to a start and snorted, "Goddamn thieves." Obviously, he hadn't recovered his bet money. Red wasn't much of a driver, but he did keep the outfit on the road, and he avoided other cars and trucks, some of them by inches. Before they got to Albuquerque, he stopped and bought a box of groceries for Mio and a case of whiskey for himself. Then he waited till late at night when the streets were deserted to drive through Albuquerque. Even at that, he needed several drinks to make it. A few drinks called for more, and by the time they reached Bernalillo, just before dawn, he didn't care which side of the street he drove on. He got through Bernalillo, though, and out into the open country before he was too drunk to see the roadside fences. There he pulled up and slept till late afternoon. Then they went on home. Red still had enough for a week-long spree, and when Mio went through his pockets, he found almost $100. Mio took care of Tom's leg. He massaged it, urging the circulation, and when the bone began to knit, he kept the ankle from going weak and stiff. By midsummer, the leg seemed as good as ever, but despite Red's objection, Mio insisted that Tom would stay out of the saddle till August. Then Tom got on one of the gentle horses and rode on the flats a few hours each day, getting the feel of the saddle again. 2 weeks of that, and he was ready to ride broncs. They brought in the rough string. Tom began testing his skills and his timing, and by mid-September, he was ready for the fall rodeos.